Welcome back to Inspired Forward. I'm Dan Trinidad, and I am excited today to have Matt Johnson, who is the producer of the show and a fellow podcaster. And today we're going to have a conversation about personal philosophy and playing the long game. Welcome, Matt.
What's up, Dan? Great to be here.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for producing this show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun.
It was way out of my comfort zone when I first started, and it's getting a little easier, but I owe it all to you that has really brought me into this space, and you've been a great coach, and I really appreciate it. I'm getting a lot of really positive feedback from the people listening to the podcast, so thank you.
Yeah, that's exciting for me to hear. So unfortunately, all of that awesome feedback doesn't always trickle back to me as the producer, although we've had you on my show as well. And so we got great feedback on your episode, and people love seeing you and they love hearing your perspective. And that's why I wanted to do kind of a shorter episode today where we delve into a little bit of your personal philosophy, because that's actually how you and I kind of started this whole conversation about doing a podcast. So, I mean, it's awesome to interview other people and kind of get their perspective, but I want to pick your brain a little bit and get your perspective, because I love the way that you live your life, that you approach your business, and it's very much kind of an integrated one thing. It's your life, and your business kind of fits within that. So I wanted to delve into that a little bit. So I'm really excited to kind of have that conversation, because I think people will get a ton of benefit out of just listening to your perspective on it. But I'm curious, like, if you take me back to a time, if you don't mind, where you didn't feel like you had your personal philosophy together, where you felt like you were, struggling, you were overwhelmed, or you just didn't quite have things figured out and balanced the way that you have them now. How long ago are we talking about?
Well, I think it all improves with growing up and maturity, but I've always been ambitious, and as a child and growing in through high school and college, all I wanted to do was be a professional athlete. In high school, it could have been any sport. I played three, but in college, it drew towards baseball. And when that didn't happen, I really wanted to get into a field that I was free to work as hard as I want and make a lot of money. And that's all really it was about at the age of 23. I wouldn't say I was balanced, but I was a healthy, athletic kid that just graduated college and wanted to go out and work my butt off. So I knew I had a strong work ethic. Didn't really know much about anything else. And I think getting into the mortgage business and having some luck and aligning with some real good people early on, meeting Todd Duncan, who's a big influencer in our industry. I met, when I was just starting my company, and we became good friends, and guys like Dave Savage and Tim Brahim and all those guys I became very, very close to. I was fairly early in the Building Champions coaching. When Daniel started his company, I was an early client for him. And he was really my first coach that started bringing more life balance to me. So, as most people who are ambitious, have a problem with truly being happy, because you always want more. So you want to be a better boyfriend or husband, and you want to be a better son, and you want to be a better parent, and you want more money, and you want to get in better shape, and you want. So you're constantly assessing what you don't have versus where you're at, and it can produce some dissatisfaction, some unhappiness, and you got to be really careful of that. And I think once I had kids, that started developing for me, and I was absolutely 100% committed to being a great dad, not missing any sports, school events, homework, things like that. But one of the things I suffered from early was when I was at work, I was thinking about my family. And when I was with my family, I was thinking about work. So I wasn't really present.
Yeah.
And becoming present, I think, just is so important. And you're hearing about it more today with so many people. And that certainly helps, is to try to be wherever you're at.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
That's an interesting thing. You talk about that tension between ambition and happiness. And one of the things that I've heard it's hard to keep in mind, but I'll share it because it's something that I thought was really profound. And I don't remember, I wish I could give credit where credit's due, because I wish I could remember exactly who said it, but something to the effect of this. Like a lot of the source of our unhappiness, especially for ambitious people, is looking forward to the future and looking at how far we have to go to where we feel like we should be. And we spend most of our time ignoring how far we've come. So we don't spend a lot of time
Yeah,
looking backwards and appreciating all the progress that we've made, which causes a
yeah,
lot of our unhappiness. So I definitely don't implement that advice as much as I probably should, in terms of being grateful for the ground that I've covered. But when I have people or circumstances that remind me, for whatever reason, of how much ground has been covered in the last couple of years, it definitely helps. And it helps me to be more present and grounded in being okay with where we're at in the journey.
absolutely. I started to practice. So my current coach is Dan Mube, and what he taught me several years ago was I really used that last week of the year, the week between Christmas and New Year's, and spend a significant amount of time really taking a look back and reflecting on the success I had, the growth I had this year, the wins. You spend a little bit time on some of the mistakes, some of the things you want to do differently, what you learn, but not too much time. And that has helped out tremendously, because you're right. We often don't pay attention to an accomplishment. We keep striving for more.
Yep, I agree. It's really hard, just to be present. If you're ambitious, you tend to be that person who's living in the future, which is, that's how you end up creating a better future for yourself. But the flip side is you sometimes spend a little bit too much time in the future and then beating yourself up for not getting there
Right,
fast enough.
right,
Which I
exactly.
think that's part of what I love about your perspective when we first started talking about the concept of the show. And the concept and the idea of playing the long game really kept coming up again and again. So let's talk a little bit about that, because to me that kind of is the solution to all of this, because it's great to be ambitious, it's great to work hard in the present and want more for ourselves in every aspect of life, and really be pursuing it. But we also have to realize that we don't have to do everything all at once, and that comes from more of a more mature kind of long-term outlook, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, and I think balance in general, it ebbs and flows. It's impossible. It's really impossible to be completely balanced at
Yeah.
all times. I think people that do look into the future, I mean, paint your picture of how you want it to be, even though it might not be this way yet with money, or yet with your family, or you're not in the shape you want to be in. But define where it is you're going, and how you want life to be in your future. And then allow that vision to guide your choices and decisions today, knowing that you've got plenty of time. I mean, accidents could happen, tragedy could come, but if you stay healthy and you stay focused to living the life that you want to live, chances are you're going to live a lot longer. And I
Mm.
think some of the errors I made younger, and still often do, is I punish myself for failure or things I made mistakes on. And what I'm learning to do a lot better is forgiving myself, or accepting it and learning from it, and then quickly move on. I tend to go back and think about, how badly I screwed up in this area, or why didn't I do this, or I could have done that. My wife Katie constantly reminds me, don't even think about that.
Yeah.
Like you've already you've already gone through that. You know what you learned. Focus on what you're doing now, and she's been a huge help. And just that practice has helped me significantly.
Yeah, I tend to be the same type of person, so extremely hard on myself, especially for perceived failures and things like that. And one of the things that helped me, that I worked with my own coach on, was the concept of there is honorable failure and there is dishonorable failure, right? So it's one thing to set out and say, look, I believe that this is a goal that I want to achieve. This is the set of actions I'm going to take to hit that goal. And then you take those actions and it doesn't hit the goal for whatever reason, some external circumstance, or you just didn't know enough about the problem that you did the right things to get there. But you did the right things. You fought to the last second, right? So you fought up to the deadline of when your goal was set for. That's an honorable failure, and there should be no shame in that, right? And if anything, you learn more about the problem. And that was a big light bulb for me, right? Because I tend to I would beat myself up for anything that I perceived as a failure, whether it was honorable or not. And then really, would get down on myself. So that set me free a lot, right? If it's an honorable failure, if I did what I said that I was going to do, and I believed that that would get me the result that I wanted, as long as I did what I set out to do, maybe I wasn't great on the goal setting part of it because I didn't know enough about the problem. But now I know enough. Now I know more, and I can set a better set of actions. But the real dishonorable failure, the one to beat yourself up over, is just giving up, like not doing the things you set out to do for whatever reason. And that's where you really do like examine. So I did want to ask you a question about because you mentioned that last week before coming into a new year. I'm curious because I've gone my journey has evolved on this myself. I'm curious where you're at. How do you set goals for the year? And are you a shoot for the stars, hit the moon kind of person where you lay out everything you'd like to achieve, and then if you hit half of them, that's good? Or are you very specific and you only set the goals that you believe that you can achieve for that year, and then you commit to just those few things? Like, what's your approach in that last month going into a new year?
Yeah, so I used to just have big crazy goals and not achieve them, and then my practice for goal setting, and I absolutely love goal setting, and I've always done it. I set goals that were achievable and something I knew I could do. It was going to require some effort, but something I knew I could do. But in listening to a recent podcast of Hal Elrod's, actually, they discussed setting goals that really weren't likely to be achieved, setting goals that were a little bigger, possible but not probable, but really focus on the process and enjoy the process of that growth of going after the bigger goal. And typically you'll achieve way more than what you would have if you just set an achievable goal that you coasted to get to. So so this year I in all the buckets, I went fairly big. There's some smaller goals, some goals that are shorter, like 90 days, but I've gone quite a bit bigger and hit the ground running in January, and I'm fired up to have this year be my best year ever.
I know. I want to talk about that. So I want to close the show out with what the last month has been like for you, because that's very interesting. Before we do, let's close out. Before we close out the show, actually, let's just take a step back and let people know kind of where can they go to connect if they're in the listening audience and they're interested in actually coming and joining the team there at Partners Mortgage, or they just want to learn more about you and your coaching. Where can people connect?
So my email is dtrinidad, TRINIDAD, at partnersmortgage, MORTGAGE.com. You can call me on my cell phone or text me on my cell phone, 916-847-4946. And I'm happy to chat and happy to help in any way I can.
Yeah, and then on the website, Partners Mortgage, you guys have a couple of pages for like our team and join our team, where you can learn more about what it's like to work with you guys, and you can actually schedule a chat with you right on your calendar through that page on your site. So I wanted to point that out real quick. And then for the show itself, you can grab it on your favorite podcast app. So Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify is a big one that now is getting a lot of traffic and a lot of interest there. So you can go to any of your favorite podcast apps, check out the show. You can download and subscribe it. And then we'd appreciate if you share it with anyone that you feel like would get benefit from it, especially if they are in the mortgage space. So let's jump back in. Tell me about January. So you hit the ground running in January, and holy cow, like you set a big, I don't know what goals you set for yourself physically, but you seem to have knocked it out of the park. How did that go?
Yeah, so I mean, I got a little out of shape that last quarter of the year, and stopped my daily disciplines of exercising, training. I was nursing a bad back, and in late summer, and the habits that I developed were just, for the most part, fairly lazy. Put on a little bit of extra weight, and I just said enough's enough. And on December 28th, the day after my mom's birthday, I weighed 197 pounds. And today I weighed 173. So in the month of January, I lost 24 pounds. It's interesting that just in the first 5 days of February, in kind of celebrating and eating some stuff I probably shouldn't have, and having a couple beers, I put on a couple pounds and quickly said, "Uh-oh." So I got back down, but no, I'm going to be turning 59 in another month, and which means I'm going into my last year in my 50s. So I want to be in the best shape of my life, relatively speaking, on my 60th birthday of 2020. And that entails being flexible. So I've started yoga, and something I haven't done, but I'm doing yoga 2 times a week. Strength, because I think as you age, you want to keep your muscle. And so I'm doing strength training 3 days a week, and my endurance and stamina. So I'm doing anywhere from 3 to 5 days of cardio a week. So the goal is really to work out 30 minutes for 6 days a week. Equates to about 300 days of exercise this year, and I'm checking them off every single day.
And that's the approach that I love, because you basically took a very kind of nebulous, kind of out there goal of just, I want to be in the best shape of my life, relatively speaking, and a lot of people would go, great, that's, and not really know how to translate that into action, right? So you figured out, okay, well, that's the goal. I want to feel a certain way, but here's exactly what this is like the specific set of actions that I believe is going to get there. And then you commit to those actions and you check them off every day that you do them. So it's very practical, and it sounds very down to earth, but that's the step that most of us miss, is just breaking it down into those practical steps and then committing to them.
Yeah. It's taking your year goal or so, and really breaking it down to, I think the mistake I've made historically is not take action on it today because it's a goal a year from now, thinking, okay, I'll just start busting my butt in October to hit my goal. And I'm taking a way different approach. I joined a group called Go Abundance a couple weeks ago. They had a meeting in Breckenridge, met 150 guys that are like-minded. So they're attempting to grow their wealth, be great husbands, and be great fathers, do bucket list adventures, and be in and one of their pillars is age-defying health. And so that just reinforced the goals I already had set prior to the year. I even got significantly deeper. And we had on the first night, a gentleman by the name of Charlie Ingle spoke, and he was a man that ran across the Sahara Desert, and that's 50 miles a day for 100 and something days a year, 120 days 120 days in a row. So he ran 50 miles every single day. It was documented on film by Matt Damon. They have a Netflix documentary on it, and he spoke, and really just to show that, how possible things are when they seem so very impossible. I mean, this is running in the Sahara Desert. The sand is just is deep and thick, and running through third world countries, and Middle Eastern countries that were, I mean, entering the gates of Libya. He had a lot of fear about, and when he got there, there was really no gates, and he just ran through, and people kind of looked at him weirdly, and but he did it. Now he's got some other much bigger goals. And
Wow.
then, so ironically, they formed accountability groups for this next year, and I was lucky in that Charlie Engel happened to join GoBundance after his presentation, and he's my accountability partner. So I'm a little bit nervous. Because I've had this goal out there of doing an Ironman, and I've had this goal of running a marathon, and man, he's in it. He's on top of me now, saying that's easy.
Yeah, exactly.
I've
come on,
I've done a bunch of,
pick up the pace here.
I'll show you how. This is what you do. And so, so part of that being in the best shape of my life by my 60th birthday entails doing some big endurance events like that, because I'd never done them before. So I'm saying, you know, if I do an Ironman and I do a marathon and I do these things prior or just after my 60th birthday, then I'm theoretically in the best shape of my life, because I'd never been able to do those before. So that's one of the measuring sticks, you know, of endurance for me. And I've got smaller goals than that in terms of my health, but eating a lot better, drinking a lot less, eliminating beer completely from my diet, and, you know, having a glass of wine or two and keeping it at that is definitely going to help. And get my doctor's appointments, getting blood checked more frequently. So those are the disciplines. And then beyond that, and I know I'm rambling here, but it's you know, the same thing, you know, with dates. So I want to have 24 epic dates with my wife this year. That's 2 a month that I plan, that I do something that's just kind of out of my typical, just go out to dinner and go home. So, you know, there's all kinds of goals like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, GoBundance is really good for that. So if anybody is listening, that's a very good group that if you're in that space of life where that would be helpful, those guys definitely do a good job of holding each other accountable to really go after it in every single bucket of life. I love the 24 epic dates one. That's an awesome one.
Yeah, it's one that I went public on social media with it. So that's my accountability. So I've produced this long list of potentials. They don't have to be huge. They just have to be. I want them to show that I put some energy, thought, and effort into it, and tried to make it special. Yeah, it could be going to a painting class, going on a hike, having a romantic dinner, a variety of things. So I'm excited about that one as well.
I was going to say, happy wife, happy life. So it sounds to me like it's a recipe for good things. All right. Well, let's close out with that. So we could go on talking about goals and experiences and stuff like that for a long time, but I want to say there's another episode that I want to record. So guys, if you're listening to this one, you enjoy the solo episodes of Dan kind of sharing his personal philosophy, let us know, you know, give us a rating and review in the comments and all that good stuff. And then we'll see you on the next episode. Keep an eye out, because we'll do another episode on some of the key things that Dan has learned from mentors in his life. So make sure to check that one out. All right, Dan, thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate your time today.